doubting yourself and questioning yourself and feeling like, okay, I'm a fraud, I'm going to be caught any minute. Can you imagine trying to shoplift from a store? That anxiety you feel trying to make it out the door, and you're like, okay, I'm going to be caught any second. Put that in your mind as existing in imposter syndrome if you're feeling that day in and day out of your life. Hi, this Therapist Has Problems podcast. Hi, this is Natasha Montgomery, and welcome to this Therapist Has Problems podcast. Welcome into my office. How are you feeling today? How are you doing today in taking care of your mind, your body, and your spirit? What are some things that you have done for yourself to pour into you? Maybe this is your opportunity to take a minute, decompress, gather your thoughts, and just have some alone time. So let's enjoy this time together. Have you ever been put in a situation where you're like, I don't know how I got this promotion. I'm not 100% qualified. Or I don't know why I was picked for that thing. I mean, I'm good, but I'm not that great. At some point, they're going to figure out somebody else, anybody else deserved this. I can't be the only one. And I know for a fact I'm not the only one who has had these thoughts and feelings. Today, we're going to focus on imposter syndrome. And this is very relevant because I had to do something really big today. And it pushed me outside of my comfort zone. So I thought this was a pressing thing and it was on my heart to talk about today. So maybe it'll apply to you today. Maybe it's something that you've experienced in the past, or maybe it's something that you will encounter in the future. So for my approach, well, let me rewind. I am a licensed professional counselor, as well as a human being navigating through day-to-day life problems. So I've created this platform to provide both personal experience, but also professional guidance. So in this discussion today, I always like to start off with a baseline understanding and definition of what we're talking about. So today we're talking about imposter syndrome. So I will give you a baseline definition to work off of. Now, as I'm reading this definition, if it hits you, say ouch. We'll work through it together. It may hit you in the gut and you're like, oh, I think I'm dealing with that. It's okay. We'll figure it out. So I'm going to read the definition so that we're clear and know exactly what we're talking about as we navigate through this discussion. So imposter syndrome is defined as when you doubt your abilities and feel like a fraud despite having success or competence in a specific area. You often think you don't deserve your achievements, accolades, promotions. You don't deserve these things. And you worry that others at some point will find out that you're not as capable as they believe. You fear that you'll be exposed, that someone will say, okay, maybe they're not ready for this thing. Maybe they weren't the best pick. So it's constant fear in the back of your mind that at any point you will be exposed. Now let's take a second. Have you ever experienced imposter syndrome? I know that I have. I just told you I had an experience today that brought that up out of me. So let's talk about it. My own personal experience with imposter syndrome. I have always been the type A person, follow the rules person. If I put my mind to something, if I set a goal, I'm working towards it, I'm accomplishing it, I'm getting that thing done. So that is just my MO, my natural kind of way of handling things. So because that comes very naturally to me when I achieve certain things, I just keep it pushing. I don't take a minute. I don't acknowledge that, hey, you achieved that cool thing. I move on to the next thing. I'll tell you a very specific story that happened in the past and something that I'm dealing with currently. So during my time of getting my master's degree in professional counseling, that time of my life was crazy. And I'm sure in this podcast, we'll get into more detail. I'll give you a brief summary. At that time, married, mom, I have 2 children. I was working full time, running a team, and I was in school full time as well. I had some devastating things that I experienced during that period. And literally sitting at the graduation for my master's degree, I had reached this milestone, this very pivotal moment where I should have been sitting in pride for myself, celebrating, happy, yay, I accomplished this huge thing. Literally sitting at my graduation, my thought was, okay, next I have to get 2,000 clinical hours. In order to get my license, I need to apply for this place. I'm planning the next thing while I'm literally sitting in the moment that I should be celebrating. How many of you guys have done that? How many of you guys have decided, it wasn't the big thing that I wanted to accomplish, so I'll just celebrate when I get to that next thing? I do it all the time. I am not the type of person who knows how to naturally stop and smell the roses, as I call it. I'm not naturally a person who knows, okay, you accomplished this thing, celebrate. Give yourself a pat on the back. Give yourself that moment to just say, you set your mind to do this and you accomplished it. I have to be very, very intentional to say, Natasha, pause. Pause and acknowledge this thing that you have done. Pause and acknowledge that you've accomplished this goal. Pause and acknowledge that this is a good big moment. And pause and acknowledge to say, yes, there will always be work to be done, but that doesn't minimize the moment that you're in right now. So that is my message to you. Even in the smallest of things, because this world right now, it's a lot going on. And for some of you, getting out of the bed every day is a huge accomplishment. So allow yourself to celebrate those things. For some people, and like I said, I'm a licensed therapist. I work with clients in some of the deepest, darkest moments of their life. Sometimes taking a shower more than twice a week is an accomplishment. Getting up and brushing your teeth, getting up and going to work, getting up and caring for your kids, getting up and showing up with a smile on your face even when you're breaking inside. Those are accomplishments, and we need to stop and be proud of ourselves each moment that we continue to move forward. So, in that, understanding what can cause imposter syndrome, where exactly does this come from? Again, I said that I am experiencing something even right now that brought up this imposter syndrome for me. As I'm growing my company, M.B.S. Whole Health, I'm branching out into different areas that I'm interested in, passionate about. And what has been a challenge for me is acknowledging the value that I bring to projects that I'm a part of, and acknowledging and asking for what I'm worth. So, in that, the core of this, right, is how do you truly view yourself? How do you view yourself in regards to your self esteem and your self worth? When you understand who you are, the surprise in it is attached to what you're able to accomplish. When you understand your self worth, your value, the value of your space, time, and energy, then you recognize, yeah, I did that. Yeah, I accomplished that goal and I should be acknowledged. I should be celebrated, right? And I want to distinct something. Having self-worth and understanding your value is not arrogance, right? There you can take it to the extreme where you become arrogant, but I think acknowledging who you are, your worth, your value definitely contributes to how imposter syndrome shows up in your life. So if you find that you are struggling with imposter syndrome, I would challenge you to do some reflection on what your level, where you're at with your self esteem, your self worth, your self value. Next, I'd say, what is your perception of yourself, right? So, based on your self esteem, that shapes how you view yourself. If you have low self esteem, the perception is low, right? You'll be like, I don't really deserve anything. I just do the bare minimum. I'm not doing anything. And I've encountered some people where I love challenging my clients. And they'll run through this whole list of I do this and I do that and I do this and I do that, but I don't feel like I'm doing enough or I'm not doing a good job. And I really have to call this out and say, just because overachieving is your norm does not mean that you can't acknowledge that as a fact, right? Some of us, like I said, I'm a natural goal setter, go getter, accomplishing things, and I kind of brush it off. But if my norm is someone's doing it above and beyond, then acknowledge your norm. Okay, that shapes your perception. Again, when it comes to imposter syndrome as well, you have to acknowledge what effects does living in a state of imposter syndrome, what effect does that have on your overall mental health? When you're constantly living with this thought that, oh my God, I don't deserve this thing. Oh my God, I don't deserve this position. Someone's going to find out that I suck at this job. Someone's going to find out that they should have hired this person instead. I'm going to be found out. What does that create in regards to your mental health? You'll experience anxiety. You'll feel stress. You will feel depression at times, right? This has residual effects on your mental state. So when you're constantly doubting yourself and questioning yourself and feeling like, okay, I'm a fraud, I'm going to be caught any minute. Can you imagine trying to shoplift from a store? That anxiety you feel trying to make it out the door and you're like, okay, I'm going to be caught any second. Put that in your mind as existing in imposter syndrome if you're feeling that day in and day out of your life. It sucks. I wouldn't want to do it. And now that I'm thinking about it, that's a good point. I should really apply that to myself. So again, this podcast is about us and working through our problems. So with that, understanding, okay, if I choose to exist in this state of imposter syndrome, I can't be surprised that I'm feeling anxious. I can't feel surprised that every day I show up for work, I'm feeling dread. Every day I show up, I'm feeling depressed and down and doubting myself and questioning myself. That's what comes with imposter syndrome. And acknowledging that when you're doing your best doesn't mean you're doing it perfect. It doesn't mean you'll always get everything right. But it says, you know what? I'm showing up every day. I'm putting my best foot forward. I'm doing the best that I can. And I'm acknowledging the effort that I put into doing that day to day. So I want you to take some time and reflect on what are some ways potentially that imposter syndrome has shown up in your life. What are some ways that you can challenge yourself to see you for who you truly are? And that's both sides of the coins, right? You acknowledge the things that you do well, and you acknowledge your areas of growth. And in those areas of growth, that creates space for you to be a human person that's consistently growing, consistently learning, consistently developing, but that doesn't make you a fraud. That does not make you a failure. That makes you human. And that's what we all are, and that's the baseline that we need to work off of. So I have a couple of tips to help all of us, myself included, to move past and move through imposter syndrome. So the first thing is to acknowledge your feelings. Recognizing that imposter syndrome is common. So me, as a licensed professional therapist, a licensed professional counselor, if I'm dealing with imposter syndrome and I got all the tools of the education, the licenses on the wall to back it up, it is a common thing. I talk to many, many clients, many friends, many peers who deal with imposter syndrome. So you are not alone. You're not by yourself. You're not the only one. Even that person that you think, hey, they should have picked them over me, they're probably dealing with some imposter syndrome too. So you're not by yourself. So first, recognizing and acknowledging your feelings is so important. Trying to hide from your feelings is like not acknowledging a purple elephant in the room. It's gonna be there. So look at yourself and say, if I'm feeling something, if I'm feeling anxious, if I'm feeling stressed, if going to work and doing these things is causing me depression, dig deeper and understand where exactly is that coming from. And acknowledging it, right, you understand what the issue is, which means you have a baseline to know, okay, this is what I need to work on. The next thing is to talk about it. Shame, guilt, frustration with yourself, all these negative feelings that you hold towards yourself, it grows, it breeds in silence. Because a lot of us feel that we're the only ones. So, in talking to people, talking to your friends, talking to family, talking to peers, talking to a therapist, right? It helps you to be able to breathe these words outside of your mind and your body and get feedback to say, no, that you're not the only one. The one thing I always tell my clients too, when you're dealing with imposter syndrome or thoughts of depression, anxiety, face it with the fact. What are the facts? What are the facts? If you were chosen to do this thing, that means that the person who chose you saw something in you. If you were chosen to do whatever that is, and I know I'm using work as an example because it's very common, but imposter syndrome shows up in motherhood, in parenting, in relationships, in so many aspects of our life, right? But if you were selected to be in whatever that situation is, there was value seen for you there. So, talking about it, getting support, and navigating through and weeding through your thoughts and feelings in order to say, okay, what are the facts? The next thing is to celebrate your successes. So, again, stopping to smell the roses, no matter how big, how small. It's important to give yourself space to acknowledge the things that you're accomplishing. And I'll keep saying one thing I keep saying. One thing I always share with my clients is it's better to practice on the small things because when it becomes bigger, it's harder to implement new skills, right? So, what does this mean in regards to imposter syndrome? Celebrating the small wins to say, you know what? I have not let myself get outside and go for a walk in years, months. I went for a walk yesterday. Celebrate that. I brushed my teeth 3 days in a row. Celebrate that. I was able to be interactive with my kids when often I am kind of head deep in my phone distracted. Celebrate that. Celebrate those small things so when you get to, oh, I was selected for this big thing, you've already implemented celebrating your wins so that when it gets bigger, it's natural for you to celebrate and acknowledge these things. The next thing is to reframe your thoughts. Reframe your thoughts means to challenge the negative self talk, again, with facts about your competence. So, again, that goes back to my last thing is reframing your thoughts. So, again, I always say this to my clients just because you think something does not make it true. Our brain runs through thousands of thoughts a day. If I believed everything I thought, I would be like a chicken with no head. Just because you think something does not make it true. So challenge these thoughts that are coming with facts. Again, setting realistic goals is another portion. Again, for me, and I'm sure for a lot of you, you're overachievers, you're constantly setting goals, often looking to the next thing. You discount those small goals that you're meeting. So by setting realistic and manageable goals, right, you allow yourself to celebrate your wins, but it also prevents you from feeling so overwhelmed by taking on so much that because you can't eat the whole elephant at one time, you feel like a failure, right? It's saying don't always look at the big part of the picture, but make it small and manageable so that you can acknowledge your success and growth along the way. Does that make sense? Scaling it to a way that can be presentable and you can say, oh, I did that. For example, I cleaned out all my emails out of my inbox. I was able to organize my calendar. Check, check. Those are goals. Those are things you can celebrate. Say, okay, I got that part done. So making manageable goals so that you can really track your growth, your progress, but also celebrate small victories. The next tip, which I am not good at, learning to accept praise. I don't have it in my office currently. I got an award through my sorority. And one, I was not expecting it. But two, I'm just like, awkward. I don't do well at accepting praise. I don't do well at accepting compliments. So that is a struggle for me because I'm just like, oh, this is natural. It's not a big deal. It's fine. But In order to start combating, again, that negative self-talk, allowing yourself when people give you compliments, just say thank you. This is a big one, especially for women. They're like, oh, girl, I love your outfit. Oh, this old thing, I just threw it out the back of my closet. Oh, yeah, this thing is. No, just say thank you. Allow yourself, again, practice in small ways to accept praise so that as you're getting positive feedback from people around you, it isn't a natural response to question it or doubt it or push against it. So allowing yourself to accept praise is a big part of combating and pushing against imposter syndrome. The last one, super, super important. Make sure you make note of this one. Stop comparing yourself to others. Stop comparing yourself to others. Comparison 100% is the thief of joy. Comparison is a thief of joy. If you're constantly looking side to side, trying to figure out what everybody else is doing, there will always be someone doing more, doing better, who has more than you. That's just a natural reality. There'll always be someone who's not doing as well and may have less than you. That is also a reality. But if you're constantly using other people as a measuring stick to tear yourself down, that is not productive. I do believe that other people can be a motivator for you. You can say, oh, I love what this person is doing. Let me see how they accomplish that goal and how do I implement that in my life. That is a positive motivator. But if you're comparing and saying, oh, we're the same age and this person is married and has a kid and has a house and I'm not, that means I'm not doing well. That means I'm a failure. That means I suck at my life. That is not healthy. Stop comparing yourselves to others. You sit down with yourself, identify what your own goals are for yourself, and create a plan. And you identify for yourself what a realistic timeline is for you. They may not have had the same start that you had. We don't care. We care about they. I don't want to say that we don't care about they. We love they. We love all the theys. And I don't say they as far as the people that you're comparing yourself with, right? We care about them, but not to the extent that we're tearing ourselves down. So again, comparison is a thief of joy. You find what your own path is, your own goals are, and you move on your path. And you acknowledge on your path those wins that you have, and you also acknowledge on your path those areas of growth. For me, I have worked to be very intentional, and I'm trying hard. Even like I said, most recently, I had imposter syndrome come up for me. And one thing that I have learned to do for myself that has been such a helpful tip, when I accomplish something, I literally stop and I record a video talking to myself. And I will say, self, you accomplished this thing that you worked so hard to do. It was a sacrifice. It was not easy. But you pushed through and you persevered. You believed in yourself. And look at you, you did it. I am so proud of you for doing exactly what you set out to do. I'm proud of you for not giving up on yourself, and I celebrate you today for accomplishing this win. That is how you encourage yourself. And I do that for everything. When I left my job full time and I transitioned to doing my practice full time, I recorded a video. When I bought my house on my own, recorded a video. Because I want to be able to physically, in the moment, stop and recognize the hard work that I put in to accomplish a thing and say, you know what, self, you did it. You got it done. So I encourage you. You may not like to record videos. I am very big on journaling. You see my journals I created back there. Write a note to yourself. Write a love note. Write a thank you note. Go to the dollar store and get yourself some thank you cards. Thank you to me for all the things that I have done for me. Thank you, God, and thank you, me. So I would encourage all of us in our day to day to really work to be intentional about understanding how imposter syndrome affects your life personally. And out of these tips that I've provided, I want you to identify what are some some things that you can grab onto to say, you know what, I'm going to be intentional about doing this thing when I feel like imposter syndrome is coming up for me. So I know I've said a lot of words. I've shared a lot. I appreciate you for being here today with me on this Therapist Has Problems podcast. I am a licensed therapist, but I am also a human who deals and navigates through life's problems. So, as I give more tips, I'll share them with you. I want you guys to, this is a conversation back and forth. You share with me what are some ways that imposter syndrome has showed up in your life? What are some things that you recognize that you struggle with, and giving yourself praise and acknowledging those big breakthroughs that you've gone through? And what are some tips that you feel will be helpful in navigating through imposter syndrome? I appreciate you for being here. Thank you for stepping into my office. Have a good day. Bye.